Okay, so hey, today we're going to take a look at one of my favorite modern synth features. This is called Polyglide or Polyphonic Polyphonic portamento, which sounds like something that your girlfriend might get mad at you about, but it's not. It's better, way better than that, because this is what allows you to take lots of notes and bend them and stretch them all over the place at the same time in hopefully predictable ways, right? So we're going to go through what Polyglide is, how it came about, what the modern state of it is, and then I'm going to show you how it works in this synth, which is a new one that's coming out very soon this summer. Okay, so I looked around online and I didn't see a ton on YouTube, so we're going to do the quick 40-second recap of synths, mono to poly, and Polyglide and what it is, right? So what is Polyglide? So in the early days of synths, the first synths that came out, the ones you hear about like the Moog and the Oberheim and stuff like that, had just one voice, right? So they would sound like this. And if you played a second note, the question was, how do we can't play two notes, so we're just going to slide between them. So you got things like this. And people went nuts for that because you're sliding this tone all over the place and people loved it. But then eventually some people that, could play piano and stuff would say, well, I'd like to have more than one note. So fast forward a few years and you get the first, there was an Oberheim 4 voice. I think it was just called the Oberheim 4. And then there was the Prophet 5, which I think had 8 voices. Early 80s, you get synths like the Jupiter. Now you have synths that have polyphony, meaning they have more than one voice. So you can, instead of playing just one note and having it slide everywhere, you just could play chords, right? Great. Except we now lost this cool ability to slide, right? Many of them would have patches that were also mono. Certain patches would be monophonic, and so you would get the glide. But what people really wanted was the ability to take whole chords and slide them, right? That's what polyphonic glide is. Now, the first synths, the early ones that started doing this because of computer limitations and it's analog hardware and it's very hard to program, did it in what's called round robin fashion, right? So they would just take whatever the oldest note was that was being played, and they would note steal it over to the new note that was being played, and it would slide. So this led to unpredictable behavior. So you'd play a bunch of notes, then you'd play a few more, and all of a sudden this one up here would be sliding down to here, and this one would be sliding up, and they would cross, and it would sound chaotic. So that's the sort of classic Polyglide, and for many years it was just this crappy feature that everybody wanted, but it never worked, and so they just turned it off, right? Great. Modern era. Since the 2000s or so, this has become more and more a standard feature. Also on software synths, most of which have Polyglide, but most of them still get into situations where they use round robin. So they do this smart thing where they say, okay, the highest note being played is going to slide up to the new high note, and the lowest note is going to slide down to the new low note, and then we'll just do round robin for the rest, or we'll come up with something else for the rest. And some do it better than others, right? That gets us to this synth, and I'm going to show you we've done quite a lot of work to make sure that it does not ever use round robin fashion. Just crazy. Okay, let's talk some examples now. So we'll keep it on this same basic patch for now, and then we'll get into some more exotic and weird stuff in a minute. But I'm going to go quickly back through mono and some of the features you can change, and then how that applies, basic poly, and then Polyglide, and how some of these features change how it works, how it reacts. Okay? So basic mono synth, which I think is where we're set up. Yeah. Basic sound, and you hear it sliding. It slides. Always takes the same amount of time to slide. So if you slide way up there, it goes a lot quicker than if you just slide a little. You notice it slides back to the original note. This one actually remembers a note history of several notes, so you can do a... You can hear it sliding between 4 different notes because it remembers its history. So it goes back to the previous note. If that one gets lifted up, it goes back to the previous one before that, right? Pretty good. Also, this does like a catch and release, I think is what we call it. It catches the current volume in legato mode. So as you're in release, if you're in release and the sound is getting softer, when the new voice triggers, it stays legato, means it just stays at its current volume and then gets back into the attack phase and gets louder again. So you hear it kind of bumping up. If we were to take it, here's our sustain, turn it all the way up, then you hear less of that bump because it's already at a maximum volume. I think that makes sense. Okay. Now, polynote, full chords. Polyglide in this synth, we kind of keep things minimal whenever we can. So it's always in glide mode unless the portamento speed, the slide speed here, is all the way up. And then you see it just disables. So I'm going to put it fairly slow so we can hear this. And we're going to go from a low chord to a high chord. It didn't slide. Why not? It didn't slide because we'd already let it release. I can also, well, it's not sliding there either. Like, how does this work, right? Here's how it works. Polyglide only kicks in if you're in the release mode. So you play a note. If I play a second note, it just plays as normal. A second voice comes in. If I play a note, let go, and then play the second note, it will then slide. Ah, okay. Same thing with chords. So if I do a whole chord and then a whole second chord, it'll all slide up. If I keep one note held down, I can get a slide while keeping the others right where they are. Or for that matter, like if I play a chord down here at the bottom, let go of one note, and then play a new chord, you'll hear one slide up, and the other two will just come in, right? Yeah, pretty good. Just like all the other synths, we make sure the highest note slides up to the highest note, the lowest one goes to the lowest one. In the case of splits, works really well because, you know, one slides up, one slides down. Additionally, we add new voices as needed. So if you go from 2 notes to 4 notes above and beyond, a new voice will come in at the old pitch and slide, which sounds really nice. Couple more things. We also have a detune feature here. Let me just turn this off for a minute. So detune is another feature that you see on a lot of synths. So you hear that. You hear how every note actually comes in a semitone too high and then slides down a little bit, right? When we combine that with gliding, you get a really nice effect. So you really get a wobble because it comes in a little too high and then it settles back down. So it actually ends up sliding up, overshooting the note, and then coming back just a little bit to settle in, which is so nice, I think. Yeah, okay, let's do a slow glide on this one. You get the idea. Okay, now let's look at a pad, right? Which is to say a really long attack, a really long release. In this case, what's really nice is that the filter is re-triggering really quickly, right? So the filter jumps high on every new note. So what if we change the attack of the filter to be really long too, and the release to be really long? Woo! That's how you get these crazy legato-y soundscapes, right? Awesome.